rural India was seeing that growth in 2010, kind of onward. And all of these designs were missing that rural middle income segment completely. We were trying to build something which was not seen earlier in the formal financial sector. And those were very early days.
While repayments were important for us, but at the same time, we had to ensure that customers' well-being was also taken care of, and therefore we adopted a two-pronged approach.
If we have touched 1 million households who have gone from one level of affluence to the other, I think we have done our job.
We're building a rural-focused lending and distribution platform, which is really democratizing financial access to middle-class households in India.
We are in the business of collections and not in the business of disbursement. So one of the easiest choices which we did not make was to put an application in the hands of the customer and then, engage with them at a distance.
This whole find co-founders for complementary skill sets is kind of overrated. Find them for a shared vision and chemistry, and then everything else you can hire along the way. Very important.
I didn't have that courage of doing it on my own. मेरा तो सारा वेट यहीं आता है।
आप सर आप मत बोलिए कुछ। So welcome to the Day One podcast of Alleviation Capital. We are joined today by Utpal and Sameer, co-founders of SarvaGram, who are building a rural-focused lending and distribution platform, catering to a thesis which is very dear to us at Alleviation, which is really democratizing financial access to middle-class households in India. So welcome Utpal, welcome Sameer.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, brother.
We first partnered with Utpal and Sameer in 2021, middle of COVID almost, when we led their Series A. And since then, I've seen them grow leaps and bounds. Today, they operate out of 170 plus branches, serve 150,000 plus households, cover 38,000 villages across 5 states. So massive operations, but also a long way to go. Utpal, Sameer both bring with them decades of experience, 25 years each of experience, not just in financial services, but specifically rural lending. Utpal led ICICI Bank's rural banking group, managed assets worth of 40,000 crores. I think we'll reach there in 3 years. And Sameer led and set up actually distribution for Adani and Fullerton in India. So excited to have you guys over 4 years after we first invested in you. So tad late, but nonetheless.
It's a pleasure, Mridul, and thank you very much for having us here.
Thank you, Pradul, for having us here.
So also maybe I'll start, a little bit with startup journey. So both of you are still at pinnacles of your career and, experience, but really at senior positions in wherever respective places you were in. Sameer, maybe start with you on saying, what was that aha moment or insight or desire in you to start up and do SarvaGram?
Okay. So let me start with the starting of my career, Mridul. It's an interesting story. So I started as probationary officer in Bank of India way back in 1995. And as part of your responsibility, you have to serve in rural for about an year. And I was deputed in a very remote location in Madhya Pradesh at that time. And I used to think when I would get out of that place, because I was a young man at that time. And I also had my own dreams of, spending time in urban locations. I never knew that I would be, spending this whole career in the rural. So I moved out of Bank of India because of this reason that I didn't want to spend a lot of time in rural. Moved to ICICI Bank. Incidentally, because of my rural exposure, I was again put to rural banking group in ICICI Bank, where I incidentally met Utpal also between 2005 to 2007. And then I moved to Fullerton, where I spent about 10 years setting up their rural business and scaling it up. During my Fullerton stint, I saw this whole growth that was happening in rural catchments. And while Fullerton, we were doing very well in those catchments, but I used to think that we could do even better in those catchments more efficiently. But I didn't have that courage of doing it on my own, and therefore I wanted somebody who could join me in starting up. Utpal probably was very happy with his ICICI career at that time, but later on when Utpal also decided that he also wanted to become an entrepreneur, we came up with this idea of SarvaGram, and we started. Maybe you can, from there on, you can tell your part.
Coming to once a young man, you still look the youngest, at least on this table. So
Well, he is the fittest for sure.
100%.
So, yeah. So, as far as the idea of SarvaGram goes, Sameer and I both have spent, as he said, our time not only in rural, but also working grounds up. And during our travels in our respective organizations, so as Sameer said, we first met in 2005, and there is this chemistry that you have, and we've been the best of friends since that time. Though we were in different organizations, as we were delivering on our jobs, doing our duties, we would sometimes meet and compare notes. And during that process, we figured out that we had very similar observations on a lot of formal sector missing out on the big realities of upcoming rural. That is where we thought this market needs a design and an organization that takes into account these new realities and doesn't still live in the past of it being only about agriculture or it being about poverty alleviation, only so on and so forth. Like the urban Indian experience of late 90s, the whole middle class, growth, rural India was seeing that growth in 2010, kind of onwards, from there onwards. And all of these designs were missing that rural middle income segment completely. And when we would sit and talk, and there were many more actually, if I remember to begin with, but when we would sit and talk and compare notes, we would see that there is nothing which is designed for a much more resilient household that is not looking at your run-of-the-mill boxed solutions, that is looking to break free from the traditional sources, money lenders and informal sector on one hand, and very, very box products on the other hand. And that is where the whole design the thought process of a new organization and the design to reflect the new rural realities is essentially, I would say, how SarvaGram happened actually.
It's awesome. And why start together?
Oh, there's a photograph, and you read that most of these startup conversations happen over beer. Sameer doesn't drink, so he had watermelon juice, and I was having beer. This was in one of the meetings in Bombay. There were 8 of us around the table, and this was the ICICI gang. I mean, the startup space is full of ICICI. We are called the ICICI mafia in a way, actually. But as we took the steps forward, various members of this gang had various other thoughts as well. But I think our conviction was the strongest. My conviction was that while I had been in the banking space, Sameer had been in the non-banking space and seen that entire 0 to 1 journey there as well. So I thought we could complement each other well enough. And even when from 8 we were down to 2, I thought that was more than enough.
Yeah, survival of the fittest.
Yeah, I think while we started with these 8 guys, somewhere in my mind I knew that some of them would drop off during the journey, and that's what exactly happened. And the last guy actually dropped off at a very crucial moment, and that's when probably Utpal got a little shaky also. And that's when I called up Utpal and told him that if you are there, I'm also there. And that's the kind of bonding that we always had. And probably that bonding has actually helped us in taking this journey so far, and I'm sure this will go a lot far.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. So you started and then had a great start, seed capital, everything, and then COVID happened. So I'm curious to know, like, how did you navigate that, running branches?
So COVID was a big surprise for all of us because we had started just 6 months into the business and COVID got stuck. I remember we had a portfolio of close to 20 crores at that time. And while COVID is stuck, when we were discussing this, we, kind of arrived at a conclusion that we had two set of stakeholders. One set of stakeholders was our own employees who, needed to be taken care of at that time. And the other set was our customers. While repayments were important for us, but at the same time, we had to ensure that customers' well-being was also taken care of, and therefore we adopted a two-pronged approach. One was that we, started a whole lot of more engagement with customers at that time, so that we knew whether they were doing well, whether they had some income or not, if they required some kind of moratorium, etc. For employees, because we knew that they were not able to source at that time, they were hardly going to the field, etc. So we moved them to another incentive program which was based more on collections. And we decided that there would be no salary cuts for the employees. And both of us, we ensured that we should show up either wherever possible, either on the branches or in whichever office we were allowed to move to, and therefore that gave a lot of confidence to our team members, and they started showing up, they started engaging with customers, and during that time most of the other organizations were not visible during that time, and therefore probably their collections got impacted a lot, while we eventually moved up to 99%. So that was the COVID journey for us.
While COVID did many horrible things to the world, probably for us, one silver lining was that our performance, stood out, differentiated from rest of the peer group. Also, I think somewhere, at least for me, my personal conviction on the model became that much stronger. Because we were trying to build something which was not seen earlier in the formal financial sector, and those were very early days. So proof of concepts were very, few and far in between. And it was that engagement, it was that response from our customers, that kind of month on month, whichever metric you take. And those days, number of customers who have taken moratorium had become a very important metric. Number of customers who were, getting back. I think what also, I think we got lucky because agriculture and rural occupations were not that deeply impacted, as though there was impact on trade and MSME, and we got some, hit on that account. But because of our, risk balanced portfolio, even that small one, and that was the DNA of the organization right from very beginning, I thought that it gave us a differentiated position in the peer group early on as well.
No, definitely. I mean, I can vouch for the fact that, we looked at partnering during COVID. We did maybe one, maybe two lending deals in COVID, and like your metrics really stood out. So glad that we partnered around that time.
So are we. But the one memory of COVID and the travels that you spoke about was that yellow sticker. So we got those mass produced and gave it to every single of our staff to say that if you stick this, you are exempt from being stopped at checkpoints, etc., etc.
Yeah, it was an insane time. I mean, I remember our diligence. I think one of your branch managers had a laptop, and he gave me a branch visit on Zoom. So I was chicken enough not to go. So.
No, wise enough actually.
But I mean, that seems way past. So you've obviously grown quite a bit, dispersed more than 2,000 crores since then. There is this whole concept in Bangalore and tech companies on PMF, product market fit. I'm curious to know, how do you define a PMF for a lending company, and when did you feel you got it?
So it's very simple, I think. In most of the companies, it should be simple. In lending companies, it actually is very simple, which is that the terms on which you extended an advance to the customer is the repayment as per those terms. There is, in fact, there's no other method in my mind, a better PMF than this number. And the second one, of course, is that do you get repeats? And both of us were very, very clear that in our business, in the lending part of our business, we are in the business of collections and not in the business of disbursement. And collections on relationship, we shouldn't, so, and that's something that we've maintained even, till now. Whether it is 1 crore or 2,000 crores, it is customer relationship, the household relationship that basically drives our entire. So, if you have, and you need very high numbers because that's how the ROA tree stacks up. So, if more than 99.5% of your customers are honoring the contract that they've signed with you, you have a great PMF. Also for us, in the market that we operate, it's not that there's nobody. There are lots of options, there are lots of choices. And in that, when you have a larger portion of your book coming as a balance transfer compared to what is getting balance transferred out, means that the underlying population is preferring you over other choices that they have. And I think these would be my definitions of whether we have hit PMF and whether we are good to scale.
Yeah, I mean, we have this often saying internally, which is giving money is easy, getting it back is the hard part. So decades of experience there, I'm sure, clearly helps.
Yeah.
You both also started with some very unique design choices. I remember even in the first day we met, speaking about that household as a fulcrum or the unit which you underwrite, the way you thought about multiple products and what fits whom. Bunch of things you've done on technology underwriting. So maybe, talk us through those design choices you made across different dimensions.
So, for Sameer and I, these design choices were not a matter of great deliberate thinking over, months and months. It was reflecting the reality of the underlying market and its unit into your design. It's as simple as that. And I said, because both of us had the advantage of having worked bottom up in this market, we innately knew what this whole thing is going to look like. And as I said, the formal sector was ignoring these realities. So you have lots of, say, a business loan product, which works very well. It's given to a shopkeeper or somebody who's a small manufacturer, a micro or small enterprise. But an individual view or a product view forgets or does not take into account the fact that maybe women of the household are members of microfinance institutions, JLGs, SHGs. They've borrowed from there. It is that money which went into, the current stocks of that shop and establishment, and the cash flow will go back to that microfinance institute. So when you take a product view or you get a very blinkered view, not just on the liabilities, but even on incomes. Most of these households, and we are talking about the rural mid-income segment, are multiple income. So when you sit in those houses, when you eat there, when you talk to them, when you are having chai with them, you are seeing all of this live, and it is getting into your subconscious, on its own. That, there's a tractor and there are so many milch animals, and he talks about his brother who works in the factory, so on and so forth. So you innately start putting all of these together into your design. So you say that the unit is not the individual, it is the household. The appraisal therefore becomes that much more complex. It's no more a linear, line. So you have to account for multiple sources of income. You have to account for fluctuations in each one of those. You have to account for seasonalities in each one of those. And therefore you have to be able to create in our language, an MRI of the household that you're working. And then you decide how much you want to invest with this household. And for what duration, how long can you go on this household. And that essentially is our design.
Just to add, rural households are typically slightly different from urban households in the sense that they are still very joint, combined households, wherein multiple incomes are still pooled in, and because of presence of huge number of microfinance institutions, almost in all of these households, women of the house would have borrowed a lot of money from 1 or 2 or 3 MFIs, and therefore it helps when you assess the entire household together. You are able to not only pool the income, but at the same time you are able to know the entire liability of the household. Otherwise, you are blindsided if you are just taking an individual view of the household. And this entire multiple income approach has helped us not only in COVID but also throughout our customer journey. That if in case one income goes down, you know that there is another income which supports the household. So that probably has actually helped us a lot in our journey.
And along with it, both our thought processes on distribution and enabling that distribution with technology. So one of the easiest choices which we did not make was to put an application in the hands of the customer and then, engage with them at a distance. I think we were clear that we always needed human power on the front end. But the alignment of that process had to be 100%, controlled from the back end. And that needed heavy investments in technology, building your back end in a very strong aligning manner, so to say. So that the front end is doing the customer engagement. They are getting the senses, of the market, of the individual household. But their decisioning is being, controlled, guided, helped by the rule engines that run at the back end real time. So the interaction between customer, human and technology is seamless and continuous. That essentially was the other big design choice that we made in our operations early on. And from day zero, it's kind of worked for us.
Yeah. No, I think your focus on technology and what you want to do here, while keeping in mind that this is at the end of the day a touch and feel business, is incredible. One small anecdote in my mind is like, I remember very early in your days, you pretty much came to Bangalore to spend 2 weeks, because I always keep telling people there is this whole Bangalore DNA or a way of doing stuff, or Bangalore bubble and a Bombay DNA and a Bombay bubble, and you actually literally spend a week or 2 weeks here meeting with leaders from different domains, including a lot of technology companies, who, by the way, came back to me mentioning how much they liked your approach and your model, but you actually absorbed a lot of that learning to implement in your business, which I think is incredible, and shows like you can do this for 25 years but still be open to learning and adopting some of this stuff.
See, we are salesmen by our DNA, and we did not know a lot of what we should have known or what is essential to build that entire design that we spoke about. So it was 40 people over 12 days. Most of them in person. They were kind enough to guide me and give me this time. Thanks to you, actually, because all those connects were, and the amount of learning that I had was, of course, it was one of those events which changes your perspective and opens up.
It's phenomenal. So, other part of your approach which has always intrigued me, I've also debated it with you a lot and I continue to, is this emphasis on not just building lending, but also distribution platform in a sense. And maybe you can explain a lot more your thinking behind that. What are you trying to achieve with that? Is it only impact and is more social good, or is it good for business? Like, maybe explain to us what you're trying to build beyond lending.
Yeah, just anything social or impact, etc., if it does not stand its own feet, it is not impact. So, see, the fundamental hypothesis that we have is that this mid-income household should be enabled to go from one orbit of affluence to the other. In that journey, they have created an X amount of surplus for themselves. Out of that surplus, we have our certain share, lion's share belongs to that household, and that's how they continue their journey onwards. This movement happens through a productivity jump. Productivity jump happens when credit and a solution which is working along with credit works together. Credit is a very important part of productivity jump, but it needs to be added to something which helps them improve their basic enterprise. Could be farming, could be a business, a small manufacturer, whatever be it. So one of our points has been that if you are able to build these twin flywheels of credit and productivity, both of them feeding each other, it creates a virtuous cycle for the household. And then you keep on getting your share of that productivity jump that the household is taking. That's why we've wanted to build models which are synergistic at the household level, at the front end. Could be credit plus risk mitigation, credit plus risk mitigation plus a productivity solution. Could be risk mitigation plus productivity. It could be credit plus, product, whichever way, these flywheels work. That's the attempt that has been from day one.
So risk mitigation is insurance, I guess.
Yes. I mean, mostly insurance, but it could be, for example, it could be a hedging, solution for crop prices that our farmers grow, for example.
And what are the productivity solutions?
For example, farm mechanization is a very large challenge in this country. We have done tractorization, of the whole agricultural operation, but beyond that, it's very. So these smaller implements, which benefit from the power that is available in that market, but then helps the farmers improve their yield. It could be, around fertigation. It could be around, spraying, threshing, any of these, which take again the reality that we have, 1 hectare average land size. So you can't just import those large machines and let them work. So that's the kind of model that we are trying to. What it does is that you need, say, X amount of information to be able to decide on a household to extend credit. And that's a high risk decision for the lender. But if the household has come to you on the basis of a mechanization operation, it has given you a bit of information as part of that mechanization, which feeds the top of funnel of the lending business as well. So that's the synergy that we are kind of trying to look for and build.
Understood. So what's like now doing this for some time, like what was the thing that surprised you the most about the rural customer once you started serving them?
I think 2-3 things, Mridul. One is that when we entered rural, we knew that the entire rural catchments were growing very fast, but we thought that we could offer them any product. But when we went to them, we realized that they wanted the best of the products. It's not that the rural people, they didn't have choice. They, for example, when we went to them with smartphones, they wanted the latest models. The other surprise was that we thought that salaried individuals would not, be really interested in us. But to our surprise, we have about 30% of our portfolio in salaried segment.
Not wage labor, permanent salaried where provident fund is getting deducted from their.
And this is probably, while in all of these catchments where we are present, at least 15-20 other players are already present, including public sector and private sector banks. But probably they don't fit into their eligibility criteria, or probably they are not really interested beyond, tractor loans and KCC loans. And therefore, these individuals were really interested in our products, and they are doing very well in our portfolio.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is a lot of market and opportunity in your business model. I'm also curious, as co-founders, some both glimpse of internal workings. How do you both work together? How have you divided your responsibilities? How do you deal with disagreements, which I'm sure happen time to time? So give us a glimpse of your working together as co-founders.
It's black and white between us.
Yeah. I mean, with my read, it's the opposite shirts being on opposite people, but.
So there are lots of, in fact, there are more than agreements, there are lots of disagreements. For example, I prefer vegetarian food. He
wow, what a massive
pure non-vegetarian.
I have to side with Utpal.
While both of us are foodies, but so that's where the biggest debate happens in the organization when we have to order food, whether it would be of Utpal's choice or Sameer's choice. But jokes apart, the way we have divided our responsibilities is that business is my responsibility, sales and HR is my responsibility, and most of the other functions, risk, technology and finance, is looked after by Utpal. But it doesn't, I mean, while we have divided these functions between us, but there is a lot of overlapping also happen at times, because it's not that Utpal only knows this and I only know that, and most of the decisions are taken after a lot of deliberations between each of us.
So we've known each other a long time together. 2005 is when we met the first time. And it is in that avatar, which was before SarvaGram was even, dreamt of or thought of, we have been good friends. We've trusted each other. So that time that we've spent with each other, that trust that we've earned for each other, and the long hours that we spend on the road traveling together, and we both love to drive. So we are most often than not on long journeys, it is two of us together. So these conversations, and conversations which have an element of trust built into them. So if Sameer wants something to be done in a particular manner, my response doesn't start with a mistrust of that manner. It starts with an attempt to understanding why is he saying that? Why is his point of view different than mine? And both of us, end of the day, as you said, grey hair. So we are not, though Sameer would disagree, but we are not very hot-blooded individuals who kind of, have to break things apart. So conversations, keeping in touch, trusting each other, being the best of friends. Not just both of us, our families, as well. We take our, holidays together. Our kids are friends, with each other. So it's now much beyond just, roles that we play.
So while Utpal says that we drive together, it is Utpal who drives, whether it is my car or his car. I don't get to drive.
Because he drives at 200 kilometers an hour, so I'd better drive rather than let him.
To get the real answer to this question, you can ask more individuals.
Or we can take Mridul together and then,
I have a long pending.
I mean, to be serious, I think it is the mutual respect of each other which actually binds us together. We may have our own disagreements. Utpal has a banking background, while I have worked in non-bank for a very long time, and therefore we bring two different perspectives, and those perspectives are contradictory also at times. But ultimately, I know that if Utpal is saying something, he is saying for the benefit of the organization, for the benefit of the all of us. And the same thought probably goes into Utpal's mind as well, and therefore the outcomes are always very, very positive and in the benefit of the organization. And that has probably kept us together, and it will keep us together as well.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think someone else told me, I'm forgetting who, that this whole find co-founders for complementary skill sets is kind of overrated. Find them for a shared vision and chemistry, and then everything else you can hire along the way. Very important. And then, like lending, financial services, NBFCs are very fragmented setups, unlike, let's say tech companies are one, they're big setups too, but they're one place. So how do you really then translate those values, culture, hiring, which is so fragmented, so dispersed? So maybe take us through hiring philosophy, culture, maintaining cohesion to the extent you want the cohesion.
So to start with, when we started this organization, we ensured that we hired people who knew each other, who had trust in us, and we also knew them very well. The only qualification probably for these people were that they were passionate about this entire rural proposition, and they were all very hardworking. And we started with them.
You mean even on ground, people were known by you?
Obviously.
Sameer has a very large fan following in this sector. So data, first 1,000 people of the organization were either directly recruited by Sameer, they had worked with Sameer earlier, or one step away. That was the level of fan following that he has in the sector.
Yeah, and it starts with a very strong induction training, which we impart for 2 days in the classroom, and which is followed by about a month on field. And the way we train people is that there is a buddy system wherein each new employee is is required to shadow a very experienced relationship officer, and then they come back to the classroom again, and then the second phase of training happens with them. And this whole thing has created a culture of the shared values, the shared thought process. I'll give you one example that we had last year. We had completed our fundraise and lots of investors visited our branches, and we were so happy to see across our branches, because we don't select branches for investor visits, they only do on their own. Every employee was speaking the same language of what we speak in the head office.
Some of those conversations
They relate back to you.
they did on the video call with senior people as well, saying that we are offering you a job from such and such organization.
Oh, okay. These were mystery calls.
Mystery calls. Yeah. So this boy or this girl would go through the whole interview, then quickly come and tell us that, sir, this is what has happened.
Is investor ka bhi ho gaya.
No, but one important part, I think I'll add to what Sameer you said, and is that you have to show up, and you have to be there. It is not, culture cannot be built on distance. It cannot be built by missions and vision statements written, etc., etc. You have to show up, and you have to be as connected with the front line on this date as you were on day +1. I'll give you an example. I was doing a review of some of my team members last week, and one of them said there's a branch called Osia in Jodhpur district in Rajasthan. It's quite some distance away. Anybody will need some effort to travel to that. And the zonal head said that, sir, Sameer sir ओसिया ब्रांच में 9:15 बजे पहुंच के खड़े थे, वेट कर रहे थे कि ब्रांच कौन आएगा, and there's a whole process on who will, etc. So that ethos is still there, and it will continue to be there. And when you bring that ethos, the whole leadership team is seeing that if that is how this founder is actually working, then you don't then need to worry about how do you take this culture of discipline, for example, that branches will open on time and they will be clean and they will be ready to receive and serve customers at 9:30 a.m. every single day in and day out.
Explains the role the fan following Sameer also has.
The culture of ownership. So one is that while we are a startup and we don't have a lot of money, but what we ensured is that every employee is insured with a life cover as well as accident cover. Probably we are one of the very few organizations, because most of our relationship officers have to travel on two-wheelers every day 50 to 100 kilometers. So we provide them with helmets, good quality helmets. While even if he does not wear helmet, it doesn't hurt me, but it actually hurts me if one of my employee meets with an accident or something like that. And all of this has actually helped us in creating a lot of ownership amongst the employees, because they know that not only the senior management and but also the promoters, they care a lot about us, and therefore probably this passion.
Actually, that's incredible. I didn't know we do that's pretty powerful.
Many. So this is all very, very, very small things. The helmet is one very small thing. So we wear helmets and we, get on a bike and we make that video and we circulate it. So, and if we get into a branch and if we find somebody, who's traveling and doesn't have a helmet, it's a nightmare for that person then and there. Peak of summer, many of our we don't have air-conditioned branches. Our branches work on fans. Temperatures are 45 plus, 47, 48, 49. So then people have the flexibility to start their day early. By the time the sun is up, you can come back. You can, rest till whenever it becomes comfortable. Electrol, water bottles. These are the small things which kind of tell people that the relationship is not just इस महीने कितना disbursement करेगा. That is
actually I learned this from Utpal. During COVID, one of our employee, unfortunately, he died, and he was recently married. Utpal ensured that we took her wife in the job, and we gave her job while she was, we didn't have anything for her at her qualification level. But what Utpal said was, this employee died while he was in the job, and therefore we have to ensure that his family should run. And this lady was there with us till very recently. She left us, I think, 1 year back.
No. So she got married again. So she was with us for 4 years, got married, and then, moved on to her new life actually.
These are amazing, powerful stories.
Doesn't take too much, but it just connects you to your team very well.
Awesome. So, I mean, the other aspect of this business, changing gears, is regulations and regulators. I mean, I've sent a lot of people your way, Utpal, personally, fintechs which we fund, and say, how should we think about regulations? And this is something you've done many years. So, what is the mindset, framework you approach, and for regulations which, at least presumably outside in, seem very complex landscape to navigate? So, how do you navigate that landscape?
It's not complex, Mridul. You have to understand one thing very clearly, that probably, many of the young founders that you have sent my way, and that this has been my counsel to everybody, is that keep regulation aside for 1 second. You are touching public money. Doesn't mean that you are raising deposits from people, but if you're borrowing from any place else, that source of fund is public ultimately. So you're touching public money. That is a fiduciary responsibility. So to ensure that you deal with your responsibilities in touching public money, there is regulation. That is part one. Part two is that you don't try to do creative interpretations. It is written in black and white. They always come in black and white papers.
Yeah.
Simple English. You read them and you do what it asks you, requires you, advises you to do. Innovation, go to a sandbox. And there are enough. For example, you're talking about regulation. There is a Reserve Bank of India Innovation Hub right here in Bangalore. They're doing some tremendous work. In fact, Sahil Kini is now, he's one of the people that you sent me to, by the way, during the Rath Yatra.
Bangalore immersion.
Yeah. So do that. But be very clear that if you're touching public money, you have to follow the guardrails. So it's not complex, but it's the price of being in this market.
And it requires thoughtful deliberation. I mean, for you folks, I remember like the way you've constructed your board, thought about independent board members, and not just thought of them as board members who will just show up at the meetings, but where they will contribute and help you. I think that's very, very thoughtful, and a lot of founders can learn from that.
In fact, both of us have worked with very large organizations and very well regulated organizations which had a very great compliance and ethical framework. And we don't want to, we want to build SarvaGram like any other big organization, a very respected organization. And if you want to be big at the same time respected, you have to be compliant, you have to respect regulation, you have to respect regulators as well. That's the only way that you become big and respected. There are no shortcuts, I suppose, in this journey, at least in the compliance and regulatory journey.
Yeah. Someone once told me, "Jaldbazi mein deri hoti hai," so shortcut leads to long way.
I mean, you have to see, the problem is that most people don't read what is written out. Please spend some time just reading. It's very, very plain, simple, straightforward. The mental makeup has to be that this is the boundary within which we have to operate.
No, completely agree.
And probably this is where our investors have also helped us. We have a great set of investors.
I have sought help from Utpal multiple times, but thank you for saying that. I like that. Continue.
I mean, we are not your first regulated entity. You have. Why did you invest in us, by the way? I've been curious about it. You said that there were only 2 companies.
In that COVID time?
Yeah. I mean, you didn't invest in us because you thought you will ask us about regulation sometime later, down the road, right?
Yeah, of course. Of course. No, it fits. I mean, one of those classic frameworks we've discussed, which is, look, India lending credit will always remain a huge TAM. We can keep thinking for decades, and we keep talking in Alleviation, FinTech, FinTeam about this whole access, experience, efficiency. Like access will remain creating access for deserving people will remain a large part of our thesis, and I believe that will remain a large part of thesis for decades to come, and we can keep building a franchise over it. I think the other part was we tracked you for a while. I mean, unfortunately, we couldn't partner together on the seed stage, but we literally met you day one, even before NBFC license, and
that worked well for us, by the way.
Yeah, for us also. But when as Sameer was saying, met you, Sameer, and it was quite evident that both of you bring wealth of experience here and complementarity also in skill sets. Your references were stellar, because when you've not started something, obviously go back by the footprints you leave. And I just really like the uniqueness of the approach, because I think the other thing that, at least as an investor, I get confused by, and I don't have a very good answer, is like very credible operators like you, founders like you, now are starting more regularly, and which is, I think, a fantastic trend, a trend we want to keep playing on. But for lack of a better word, all of it sounds very similar, and you don't need to be different for sake of being different. It's a large market, so I think those are all fine. But I also think that the insights you all had around household as the fulcrum of what you will underwrite, all of that sounded very logical. The way you thought about branch selection sounded logical, and you didn't have. And then for some great reason, we got time before your seed and Series A to track it. And then there was always hunger and desire to partner with you both. I mean, I just did, and my partner in crime was Vasudha, then, who's not in the firm, who's now on your NBFC board, which is great. We always had this deep desire to say, look, we want to work with people like Utpal and Sameer. They're just genuinely very nice people. They have great references. They're working in a great market, and they're doing something differentiated. And that desire made us keep in touch very often. And you all were very grateful, you all were very kind with your time to us. So when COVID came, it sounded interesting, and we got into chatting. We did this virtual branch visits. I think Vasudha went also to a few places, maybe 1 or 2. The data stood out. And just genuinely, let's felt like the kind of founders at Alleviation we would want to partner with, who's doing something where the mission and the values are very important, doing something which has high impact, but also has potential to create value for shareholders. Those are our reasons.
And they continue to be the same even today, Mridul. It's been 5-6 years. Today we believe that the number of such households is now more than 100 million in India. And I'm not talking population, I'm talking households, I'm talking mid-income. I'm again not talking poverty alleviation, etc., etc. I'm talking.
By the way, the biggest question I've answered on this is, when we say rural and SarvaGram, everyone thinks agri. Which, by the way, you only taught me that doesn't mean agri. So I've also answered that to a lot of people. So I really like that distinction also in your mind.
See, it's the same market reality. 1/3 is agri, 1/3 is enterprise. Manufacturing doesn't happen in Bangalore, Bombay anymore. So, and 1/3 is services. Services is not just IT, ITES. You are taking, food from the farm and putting it on our folk, and then you're sending services back, you're distributing soap and coke, right there in that market. So, yeah. We've tried to balance our portfolio in the same ratio. That works for us. That works well for us.
No, I think it's a large space, and just staying at it will mean a lot of success. And so maybe last couple of questions. I think one is more as you think of this journey, 2,000 crores plus dispersed, 170 branches, like how do you think of path ahead? What's really the vision, or classic cliched question, where do you see SarvaGram in 5 years?
Well, I think the wrong answer is that 5 years is nothing but sum of 60 months, or 60 months into 30, 31 days each, so on and so forth. In my mind, and Sameer, you come in, but to my mind, I think we have got our basic unit right. My conviction, personal conviction in this today is much stronger than what it was when we started up, or when we were just a worksheet that came to you or a deck that came to you, so on and so forth. In my calculation, there are 1,000, clusters that can be created in this country. We are in 170. Now, in these 5 years, where will be from any number between 170 and 1,000? There is a business plan that you have approved. It's a 5-year business plan that you have approved. My vision is beyond all those numbers. One, I must be able to deliver on those numbers. Without that, nothing matters. But if we have touched 1 million households who have gone from one level of affluence to the other, I think we have done our job.
That's a great vision to have.
Yeah, I think more than numbers, I think if we can, touch more lives positively, if we can help more of our customers, moving from one orbit to other, if we can replicate the same model, state after state after state, district after district after district, and if we can, in the process help our team also grow, that would be my dream of SarvaGram in next 5 years or 6 years, wherein we become more respectable organization in the eyes of each and every stakeholder, not only our customers, employees, equity holders, bankers, everybody.
Makes sense. We have this whole framework, or a lot of people talk about India, Bharat. You're clearly in that space of building for Bharat. So, any advice for young founders now, or little more grey-haired founders also, but any advice for founders starting now and building for Bharat?
First, go and live there. Not in a resort. And first understand what rural actually is, not the outskirts of this, and not Coorg and Kushal Nagar.
This is Velanur rural. So.
Actually, you're right. But first, live in rural. You will find that, and just to give you from our own customer base, 97% of our household base, and we are deep rural, we don't include any of peri-urban areas, so on and so forth, they are on one social media channel or the other. One of the customers' young daughters that I was sitting in their house having lunch, and they had a young daughter. And I got chatting with her, and she asked me for my Instagram handle. And when I told her that I'm not on Instagram, she looked at me with such derision. Aap Insta nahi chalate? That was those. So first understand what is it that you are trying to build for. Thin slices of convenience being built will not last long, in my opinion. There is so much to be done at an intervention level which will fundamentally improve, the gap, reduce the gap that exists, and then go ahead and build for it. Rest assured, the PMF word that you used, you have today, you're counting, and all, there's so many phrases, right? Building for the next billion, building for Bharat, so on and so forth. All that you do, but first build for the first 10,000, and then from 10,000 to 1 billion probably will take care of it.
Yeah, I think I pretty much agree with what Utpal is saying. You need to be more connected to the rural populace. See, if you are just looking at making money out of rural, probably that is not the right design thinking that you should have. If you are looking at some kind of, the way we saw those gaps, and we try to fill those gaps in the process, if you are, if you build a good organization, make money, you do that, but you should be passionate about what you are doing, and you should know what kind of complexities you are getting into, and you should know your risks and challenges. Then only you should get in there.
And it will be a hard-working model. Full stop.
I love that advice. Live there first. I think that's the best. That's the best piece of advice. On that note, thank you, gentlemen. This was a great conversation.
We loved it. Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Madhu.
brother.